Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Unfortunately, Steelers practice was moved inside due to rain in Latrobe. So unfortunately, we won't have too much to report on when it comes to Steelers practice today. But if they did practice, Broderick Jones would not have today. All right, he was not out there in uniform, in pads before the practice was set to begin, and it was Calvin Anderson who was working with the first-team offense, getting ready before the rain came in today. Mike Tomlin did say, though, after his post-practice press conference today, that Broderick is expected to return from his soft tissue injury that he suffered on Sunday for tomorrow's practice. So the first day of pads has been moved to tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll have full extensive coverage of that right here on Steelers Talk. However, it has been a rough start to camp for Broderick Jones. He's out there. He's not looking particularly fleet of foot. He's had some really bad losses, even though the pads have not come on yet, and it's hard to know for sure whether or not Broderick Jones is going to be ready to be this team's starting left tackle heading into the season until those pads come on. We will learn more about Broderick tomorrow when those pads go on for tomorrow's practice. But Mark Kaboly said on Pittsburgh radio earlier today, Steelers insider for the Pat McAfee show says that Broderick Jones is down to 285 pounds. That is extremely light, even for an offensive tackle. Most offensive tackles are over 300 pounds easily, and Broderick is down to 285. And Kaboly's comment even said that Darnell Washington, a tight end, looks bigger than Broderick Jones does out there. Now, I think that we can probably talk about some potential replacements at offensive tackle just because of how bad of a start it has been for Broderick. Obviously, we hope that once the pads go on, he looks fine and he's going to be this team's franchise left tackle. But if push comes to shove here and he's just not getting the job done and the Steelers feel desperate enough to go out and make a move for a starting left tackle here, what options are there for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Today we're going to be talking about those options for them this year. So make sure you guys get down there in the comment section if you haven't already and let me know. What is your concern level for Broderick Jones after a slow start to camp and after getting injured already in camp? Put it on a scale of 1, meaning I'm not worried at all, he's going to be great this year, to 10, meaning we have to go get his replacement right now. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our new sponsor here at Ethos. And while I'm talking about Ethos today, go down there in the comment section and let me know your concern level for Broderick Jones. And with that, let's have word from our sponsor today at Ethos. And guys, the summer before I started here at Chat Sports, unfortunately, my family lost my late grandfather. And as you tend to do when you lose a loved one, you begin to think about your own mortality and what might happen to the people dependent on you if something were to happen to you. With today's sponsor, Ethos, your sponsor or your family is protected. Cassie and I are getting married soon, and shortly after that, I imagine we'll buy a house and start having kids pretty shortly after that. If something were to happen to me, I want the last thing the people I love to worry about is being able to pay the bills, so I trust Ethos to keep them protected. Ethos is an online platform that makes getting life insurance fast and easy to protect your family's future in minutes, not months. There is no complicated process, and it's 100% online. There's no medical exam required, and you just answer a few health questions to get a quote in as little as 10 minutes. So protect your family with life insurance from Ethos today. Get your free quote at ethos.com/NFL Daily. That's ethos.com/NFL Daily to get your free quote today. A big shout out to Ethos for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. So I'll start with this before we get into some potential trade and free agency options here, guys. I do expect that the Steelers want to see what they have in-house. They want to see if Broderick is ready to go before this season. They want to see, and if he isn't, their next options, I'm sure, will be Calvin Anderson, who they gave a $4 million contract to this offseason, and then Dylan Cook, who actually looked pretty decent when he was out there at practice on Sunday with the first-team offense at left tackle. But today, let's talk about some potential replacements at offensive tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And first here, let's talk about some in-house options for this football team. And let's talk about the guys already on the roster that could replace Broderick Jones if A, he's hurt, or B, he just sucks. The first option is going to be Calvin Anderson. He was lining up with the first-team offense today in pads before, of course, it got rained out. So it seems like he would be the first option to get that crack at the starting left tackle spot if Broderick goes down or if they want to replace him. And then Dylan Dylan Cook was the left tackle with the first team on Sunday and actually looked pretty decent. But Calvin Anderson signed a 2-year, $4 million contract this offseason. He is their swing tackle, and they really do believe in him, guys. He's had a little bit of experience playing in the season for the Pittsburgh Steelers when there's been some injuries to the offensive line, and they trust him. So that's why they gave him that contract, and we'll see how he does with the second team tomorrow when the pads go on. And then Dylan Cook was the one that was out there taking first-team reps on Sunday. And some people might be asking, why did Dylan get those first-team reps, not Calvin Anderson, when Broderick went down on Sunday? They were probably expecting Cook to be the left tackle with Calvin over on the right side with the second team that day. And, Dylan, and they weren't going to switch sides based on their preparation of the day for practice there, because they were, of course, expecting Broderick to be with the first team before he got injured. So now let's talk about some potential trade targets, all right? Now, I will say that a trade is probably less likely because NFL teams usually don't like to trade offensive linemen before the start of the NFL season, because depth on the offensive line is extremely valuable. And if you're an NFL team and you have the luxury of having depth at the offensive line position, you usually don't want to trade that away for a draft pick you're not going to be able to use until the next offseason anyway. So usually you don't see a whole lot of offensive line trades before the start of the season. However, there are some possibilities out there in case the Steelers want to get an outside option at offensive tackle. We will start here with the first name, a former Pittsburgh Steeler, actually, Kelvin Beachum, currently with the Arizona Cardinals. Of course, Beachum started his NFL journey with the Pittsburgh Steelers back in 2012. Spent multiple seasons here. He played some football for the black and gold when Big Ben was still here. Now he's 36 years old, and he's kind of a journeyman, and he's kind of got around the league, and he's played with a bunch of different teams, and he hasn't been here since the 2015 season. But he has been somebody that's been a very reliable swing tackle for a very long time in this league, and I would still say he would be somewhat reliable as a left tackle if the Steelers wanted to go trade maybe, say, a 7th-round pick for him. You guys can see his career Pro Football Focus grades. Nothing particularly fantastic. He had a really good grade back in 2014 with the black and gold there with an 82.7 grade, but that was by far the highest of his career. He's dealt with some injuries in the past as well, and then last season's grade just a 64.1. So he's certainly nothing stellar, guys, but if the Steelers just want a stopgap guy that's just going to be the starter for this year before he probably ends up retiring next offseason, and then you replace this position next offseason with either a veteran in free agency or another draft pick, that's certainly a possibility. And then when it comes to the Cardinals, they have their 2 starting offensive linemen, Paris Johnson Jr. and Jonah Williams, are locked in there in Arizona. So, I think for the right price, the Cardinals might be looking to let go of Kelvin Beachum. But like I said, guys, Beacham's their swing tackle. He does have a role there in case one of those guys gets injured. So that's the first reason why. I'm not sure if Arizona's going to want to come to the table. And then the second thing there is I'm not sure, the Steelers would love Beacham's lack of run blocking ability. Obviously, we have talked a lot on this show about the Steelers really prioritizing the run game on offense this year, and Beachum is more of a pass protector than a run blocker. Not sure if that fits what the Steelers want out of this position. But then somebody that I think would be maybe a little bit of a better fit is DJ Humphries, currently playing for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, Humphries is currently the left tackle at practice for the Rams because Alaric Jackson, their starting left tackle, is out with an injury, so this one would probably take a little bit of a longer process here. This would probably be closer to the end of training camp before this potential deal would go down. But Humphries is 31 years old, so he's not quite as old as Beachum. He's a longtime starting left tackle. He was a longtime starter there in Arizona before he ended up leaving after the 2023 season. Had limited reps with the Kansas City Chiefs in 2024. But he's got a balanced profile that I think Pittsburgh would appreciate if he were to be traded here to Pittsburgh. You guys can take a look at his career Pro Football Focus grades. And, he's had some good seasons. Back in 2020, he was a top 5 graded offensive tackle in all of football. But unfortunately, the last 2 years, his production has dipped quite a bit. His final season in Arizona was the 51st highest graded offensive tackle. And then last year, got very limited reps with Kansas City. But like I said, guys, the problem with this potential move is that Alaric Jackson is currently injured. So there's currently a need for DJ Humphries in Los Angeles. So I don't think LA at this point in time is too interested in letting go of Humphries. So this would probably have to be a late preseason type of trade after Alaric Jackson comes back from his injury and he's fully healthy before they even consider making this move. And then another potential trade target here, Thayer Munford Jr. from the Las Vegas Raiders, formerly with the Ohio State Buckeyes. He's a former 7th-round pick. And Munford in 2023, so 2 seasons ago, really overperformed that 7th-round pedigree that he came into the league with. But then last year, didn't play a whole lot, dealt with some injuries, and really disappointed after that really promising 2023 season. But he's got long arms. He can move people in the run game. That's something that the Pittsburgh Steelers would probably be, attracted to. Also, he's still relatively young, just 25 years old. He's over 310 pounds. So this is somebody that, you can take a look at the grading. First year, he was actually okay at 63.2. That was below average, but for a rookie, not bad. And then 2023 showed some growth. He was top 25 in Pro Football Focus grading among tackles. And then last year just didn't play a whole lot, dealt with certain things. And when he was on the field, he wasn't looking too good either. So, Munford's specialty is run blocking, so that fits what the Pittsburgh Steelers want, but he is a little bit limited as an athlete, and that, he's very susceptible to the speed rush as a pass protector because he's just not all that physically gifted, but he does have long arms, he does have a big body, he can move people in the run game, so that is something to consider when it comes to Munford's profile. You might be saying at home, but Jack, Munford played right tackle for the Las Vegas Raiders. Do you think he can play left tackle? And my answer to that is probably not. I think he would have to play right tackle if he were to be traded here to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which of course would mean Troy Fautanu, who played left tackle for the Washington Huskies in college, would have to move back over to the left side after spending his first 2 years, at least to start, here at right tackle with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, maybe that's not exactly the move you want to make, but if you want to bring in Munford, I do have a relatively high level of confidence that Fautanu could move back over to the left side because he was so good over there in college. It's what made him a first-round pick. When it comes to the free agency options, there's not a ton of great options. George Fant has, bounced around the league for a couple of years now. He's a former starter. Maybe you could think about bringing him in, but he's another right tackle where you'd have to move Fautanu back over to the left side. Andrews Pete has been terrible for multiple seasons, but he's a former starter. Same thing with Isaiah Wynn. Had a really promising start to his career in New England, but the last several years in Miami and other places hasn't been fantastic. And then David Bakhtiari still trying to play. He hasn't lost weight. Him and Aaron Rodgers have a very close relationship. So, if Bakhtiari's trying to play and Rodgers vouches for him, I can't say it's an impossibility that we see David Bakhtiari here if they're looking to replace Broderick Jones before the start of the season. But I actually think the best case scenario at this position, if the Steelers feel like they're desperate to replace Broderick Jones this year, I think Braxton Jones might be their best bet to actually find, not only a guy that can help them out this year, but somebody that could be a mainstay here in Pittsburgh for multiple seasons. Jones is only 26 years old. He's got really good size and really good athleticism as well. That's what he's known for. He's got a great physical profile. Now, he doesn't have the best anchor in the world because he doesn't have the best play strength, so power rushers can bull rush him a little bit. But he's been very solid as the starting left tackle in Chicago for multiple seasons now. And I think his athletic profile, and especially as a run blocker, fits what Pittsburgh wants on offense with the run-heavy approach Arthur Smith wants to instill here in the Steel City. You guys can see the career Pro Football Focus grading for Braxton Jones. His rookie season, over a 75 Pro Football Focus grade. That was top 20 in the league. And then last year had the highest PFF grade of his career, just outside the top 20 offensive tackles in the league. So he is somebody that you bring him in here, you're getting a veteran, you're getting a very solid piece, somebody that's not going to be a turnstile for you at the left tackle position. And the reason why he might be available, guys, is because the Bears are kind of getting ahead of potentially giving Jones a massive contract by drafting his replacement for the future, Ozzie Trapilo out of Boston College in the second round this year. And according to some reports on the ground in Chicago, Trapilo might actually win that job week 1. And if that's the case, Chicago might be looking to maybe unload Braxton Jones, especially because they are not interested in giving him that long-term contract. And the Steelers maybe won't give him the long-term contract with like Dan Moore Jr. kind of money, but maybe they would be willing to give him some sort of deal. I will say the price tag would probably be an early day 3 pick, somewhere around a round 4 pick at the very most, to probably a round 5 pick, maybe at the very least. The Steelers would probably have to make this trade worth Chicago's while if it's going to be done. But hey, we've seen Omar Khan fleece Ryan Poles in the past, so you never know. But hopefully, guys, obviously the best case scenario overall here is that Broderick Jones just plays up to his pedigree, all right? The Steelers spent a first-round pick on him. In fact, they spent a first and a fourth-round pick because they had to trade up to get him. So if he ends up being a straight-up bust, that's obviously not a great pick from Steelers GM Omar Khan. So hopefully Broderick, once the pads go on, he looks better out there than he did without the pads on. Hopefully that injury is perfectly fine, and he's going to be able to go out tomorrow and the rest of camp and play like the first-round player that we all hope that he is. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Should the Steelers make a move at offensive tackle to replace Broderick Jones? Have you seen enough of Broderick Jones? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. Now, before I go, I do have some final items that I want to discuss on today's program. First, some roster moves that the Steelers made today. They waived 2 players, Jeremiah Moon and Montana Lemonious-Craig. Both those guys suffered injuries during camp. Those guys have been waived. And then they signed 3 players because they had 3 roster spots open with these 2 moves, along with releasing Cordero Patterson yesterday. They brought back Dominique Davis. He was released to be able to secure Chuck Clark, so he is back. But then they signed 2 new players, Kevin Folsch, the tight end, and then Lou Nichols, the running back. So those guys are now Pittsburgh Steelers, and they'll be at practice tomorrow. And then also an injury report around the AFC North. 2 Cleveland Browns injuries. Martin Emerson, the cornerback, is out for the season with an Achilles tear. That's really bad for him. Hope that he has a full and speedy recovery. And Kenny Pickett, who was in the lead apparently to be the starting quarterback week 1 for the Cleveland Browns this year. Of course, former Steelers quarterback is day-to-day with a hamstring, and Joe Flacco is now taking reps with the first-team offense there in Cleveland. And then Isaiah Likely today at the end of Ravens practice went down with a rolled ankle. Head coach John Harbaugh says that he will be week to week, so we will monitor his status as he seeks a new contract as well. So that'll be it for today's show, guys. If you made it to the end of today's edition of Steelers Talk by Chat Sports, type those real ones down there in the comments section because we want to show you guys some love down there in the comments section. And that'll be it for today's program. Click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Tomorrow is the first day of Steelers padded practice in Latrobe, weather permitting. We're going to have a full practice report for you guys tomorrow once practice is over. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until then, guys, here we go, Steelers.